secretary. Everybody loved mom.
Hmm.
Okay, but
So,
I liked it, so I
yeah. So, one thing I just want to say is that it's these sort of fantasies are a lot more common than most people talk about. We can sort of know that even though people don't really talk about it, because if you look in the porn industry, there is a lot of porn themed around mother son incest. So it is something that comes up for people quite a lot. I've also talked to a number of men who have sort of talked about the same desires.
well,
Um,
that's kind of nice to know.
yeah, it's more common. It's just a very uncommon conversation because it's very taboo. Um,
Yeah,
so just wanted to say that right off the bat. So thank you for sharing that. I imagine it
mhm.
was a little difficult to share just because it is a taboo subject. So I appreciate that you're being vocal about it. Um,
Yeah. Well, I mean, I do appreciate you holding this kind of event, so I have the opportunity to say something because,
mhm,
I mean, when I'm talking to my girlfriends, lovers, wives, whatever it may be, um, are they doing this just to be nice to me, or is it something that I can really talk about?
mhm.
Do they accept it because it's me, or because they think it's okay?
Yeah.
With you, at least, I know you're a professional, and you're going to give me honest answers. So,
Mhm.
um, and like I said, I mean, I get so worked up when thinking about her. So
Mhm.
it's and I love it honestly. I don't dislike it. So
Okay. Well, most people, I mean, it's your relationship with that part of yourself is whether or not it's you find it distressing is a big key. So if it's not something you find distressing and it's not particularly harmful to anyone, as long as everyone is, consenting, if your partner is aware of it and supportive of it, there's lots of people who do those kind of role plays. Um,
mm-hmm.
it's about whether or not you personally find it distressing or uncomfortable. And most of that's going to
Yeah.
come from the taboo of incest, which is, obviously frowned upon in many cultures
Yeah.
for reasons of, genetics and all that sort of stuff.
Sure. Sure.
Um,
Of course. Yeah.
but I mean, if you're not finding it particularly distressing, um, I wouldn't be too concerned about it as your mother's passed at this point. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned that you find it quite pleasurable and that just even thinking about it kind of gets you going. That do you find that interferes with other sex that you're having with your partner if you're not introducing that sort of element to it?
Well, actually, I mean, I feel I am no uh, Rico Suave or anything like that. I'm just an ordinary guy,
Mm-hmm.
but I have always had a woman in my life since I was in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Even when I went in the Marine Corps, I was a U.S. Marine, and I always had somebody there who was always willing to listen to me and talk to me. And it, I don't think it's ever been a problem. Actually, they kind of get into it some. Um, Now, one of the other things that I was going to mention was, I said I was in the alt lifestyle for a
Mm-hmm.
while. I'm no longer in that because Paula, my girlfriend now,
Mm-hmm.
is that's just not her thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually tried to, and I've done this with other women. I have been very open, and I let them, if they wanted to have a playmate, I'd let them. I'm a very open individual. I feel
Mm-hmm.
confident in my relationships with them
Mm-hmm.
that I'm not worried about it. So I mean, they they would not do something to hurt me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I still have one friend who is a professional dominatrix,
Mm-hmm.
and I said I was in New England. She is actually a pro dom in New York City,
Mm-hmm.
and she knows about this, and actually, she allows me to call her mom.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, hey, okay, I'm not having sex with her.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not doing it with her. We're just talking. But I appreciate the support I've gotten from women. I mean, women are amazing. I really got to say that. It's like uh, I don't know that I could be this way, but the women in my life have been completely understanding, very supportive,
Mm-hmm.
and I just feel fortunate to have you know these kind of relationships.
Yeah, it's good.
Um, and it did help me, kind of accept it some. You know, um, like I said, the only thing is, you know, my ex-wife, her name was Ida. She's the one that said, you know, that I had to yell out, "I wanted to fuck my mother," and I
Mm-hmm.
didn't really know, did I?
Mm-hmm.
And that's really my only question. It's not the fact that I loved her. I know that.
Mm-hmm.
She was amazing. She was sexy. I mean, it was her clothes, of course. I mean, that's really what it was about. It wasn't that I was necessarily attracted to her personally. It was
Yeah.
the fetish. And but you know, I don't know. It is a bit confusing. And as I get older, it's like I want to kind of
Figure it
process
out.
this
Yeah.
through it. Yeah, it's like, what, if that's the case, if that's really what I wanted to do, I just need to admit it and just say, okay, hey, this is what it is. Like you said, it's probably a lot more common than I thought it was.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and but I mean, given that I grew up in the '60s and '70s, there was no internet.
Mm-hmm.
I was alone. No one had a fur fetish except me. You know, because you don't know anything back then.
Mm-hmm.
And as I got older, and I work. I'm a professionally speaking, I'm a computer automation engineer.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew about computers, the internet, and all that stuff. And as I saw things online, then I started learning that, oh wow, I'm not alone.
Mm-hmm.
There are other people like me, and honestly, from being with the women that I've been with, I'm really not that bad. I mean, I thought I was like this horrible person, because my God, I want to. I mean, I dress in women's clothes too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my girlfriend lets me dress in her clothes.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, but in this grand scheme of things, when I was in the old lifestyle, it's like, wow, you know what? I'm a piece of cake. I mean, compared to what some of the people out there are into, I'm really not that bad.
Well, it's
So
not a matter. It's
I,
not a matter of being bad. Um, don't yuck somebody else's yum. But
okay, sure, okay,
yeah, so it's not a matter of severity, right? It's just about being at peace with who you are, and making sure that nobody's being harmed, right? Those are kind of the key things, the guiding stars for sexuality is, does this bother you? Are you comfortable with it? And is it hurting anyone, right? And those are the key things
yeah,
that you want to
okay,
keep in mind and you want to answer. As for sort of figuring out why this happened, it could have been a lot of different reasons. When we're growing up, especially around that sort of puberty time, lots of, with all the different changes that are happening in our bodies, um, it's really common to have like surges of hormones, but we don't actually, like, it's not particularly tied to any particular thing, but our mind associates it with something. So, it could have been just something that happened at a particular moment when your body was going through changes that sort of started this, oh, hey, that's really interesting and I really like that. And then because you made that connection, sometimes it's just about like reinforcing that connection through masturbation or through, like continuing to seek that out and associating it with pleasure. And that's usually how fetishes develop for most people.
okay,
As for the connection to your mom, I mean, mothers represent a lot of different things to us. And usually it's safety and care. Now, I just want to go back to something you said before, because you said that when your father wasn't around, that you and your mother got really close and maybe a little too close. And I was just sort of wondering if you could sort of expand on that a little bit.
the kisses got a bit more passionate. I mean, we always kissed anyway. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and it didn't matter who it was. I mean, it was, even with my, you know, aunts and cousins, female cousins, and all that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
we always kissed and hugged.
Yeah.
But
Was there
when
any point
Dad
about
was,
that that made you uncomfortable though?
no, not at all. Oh my God, I loved it.
Okay.
I just I felt closer to her. So, um,
Because that
but then
probably,
that kind of made,
yeah, that probably sort of added to this, the feelings that you have about your mother now, right? Is probably formed in
yeah,
some of those experiences.
yeah. Well, actually, another thing that, um, and I'm not bragging or any of that stuff, but actually, one of the things my ex-wife used to say when I would say that, I'm horny, she says, "You're always horny," and that's in fact the case. I mean, I have, even at my late 50s,
Mm-hmm.
um, I can do it 7 times in a day,
Mm-hmm.
and that's pretty amazing for my age.
Mm-hmm.
So
So
I just
it's
have
amazing for
a
somebody of any particular age, to be honest. I mean, sex drive
yeah,
is very individual. There's a definite range that people have. Some people have a higher sex drive, lower sex drive. That's sort of all dependent on your individual, like genetics and biology, right? So,
yeah. Well, I mean, I just that was the thing with me. So you can imagine what I was like when I was a teenager.
mm-hmm.
That would be like, oh my God. Never mind now. When I'm older, and even my girlfriend now, it's like she knows, she
Mm-hmm.
understands. I mean, I'm you know I'm a walking hormone sometimes. So anyway, that's for whatever that's worth. I thought that was worth mentioning. So,
Mm-hmm.
and that's just, I mean, I'm just a very sexual person, and so that probably added to my desires for mom.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, like I said, some of the experiences that you mentioned where things got a little bit more passionate, especially if it was at a formative time, that probably was a bit of a contributing factor as well.
Well, I mean, she did not initiate this, but well, I mean, she would wear sweaters, and
Hmm.
sometimes she would wear them without bras. And as she got older, she started to, gain a little extra weight, and well, I probably did. I copped a few feels, so
Okay.
and it wasn't something that she started. I mean, it was just me because
Did she object to that contact?
um, she didn't say anything. She didn't say anything. I just did it. So
Okay.
I don't know if she was okay with it or not, but I know I wanted to. And since she also wore furs, mostly fake fur coats, but still, when she went to church, she had a special black coat, which I went and took that extra effort to hug her. And actually, when I was younger, I could not um, control myself as well. Nowadays, I can actually do stuff and not ruin anything. But I actually had come on the collar of her fur coat, and she never got it cleaned.
Mm.
So that was kind of, I don't know, exciting for me.
Okay. Was sex an open subject in your household? Did you guys talk about it,
Um,
or was it sort of like an unspoken thing?
it was well, Dad was okay with it. I mean, but then again, it was funny because um, I have an older brother, about a year older than I am, and Mom used to go through our stuff, and Mom found a condom in my brother's wallet,
Okay.
and she read him the riot act. Um, and he was trying to, oh, it's just a joke, it's just a balloon, and blah, 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 and all this stuff. About a year after that, she found one in my wallet, and I didn't make the excuses. I mean, I would have liked to have said, hey, I'm being responsible,
Mm-hmm.
and that's really what people need to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't say anything. She put it back in my wallet. So was that acceptance? I don't know.
It's hard to say. The
I
the
want to
sex
use
talk
it
is
on my.
always challenging for parents at the best of times, especially, I
Well,
mean, at that point in history too. I think it would have been a little bit more challenging for people.
yeah, yeah, that's for sure. Well, even I mean, I have two sons, and I never got the opportunity to talk to them about it, but I was prepared to do so and
Hmm.
say, hey, actually, the one thing my father had said to me, he was kind of like me, a little bit wise guy and stuff. He told me, he said, don't bring home any children, it'll kill your mother. That was my sex talk. And it's
Sounds
like,
about par for the course at that time.
yeah, yeah, when it was the 70s, so, I was in high school, so,
Hmm.
but, you know, you've already made me feel better, and I thank you for that. I mean, I don't want to take up all your time, but um, I, I, I feel more comfortable now. I was really afraid to call you because one, the subject just gets me really worked up, and I thought I'd be a babbling idiot. But I thank you very much.
You're
I do
welcome.
appreciate your time and your knowledge. So,
No problem. Thanks so much for calling in to share. And yeah, like I
okay,
said, I mean, if you're ever in doubt, just think, is it distressing you? If you ever hit a point where you do find it distressing, that might be the time to talk to somebody about it and really dig into what caused it. But if you're not finding it distressing and it's not interfering with your life, it's not hurting anybody at this point, right? So that sort of,
yeah, it actually it has never been a problem
yeah.
except in my mind
Hmm.
thinking I shouldn't think this. No, that's but
Well, there might
I
be,
can't help it.
yeah. I mean, I will say that there is some research around mother-son incest that does suggest that there might be some more stuff going on. I think that's a little bit too in depth and might be a little bit too personal for a live broadcast. Um,
Sure.
but yeah, I mean, if you do want to dig into that a little bit further, there are some resources I can recommend, some books that I can send you that if
Well,
you want to read up on it. Um,
actually, being a computer engineer, I very like when my wife went through perimenopause, which is why the divorce occurred. I
mhm,
was very upset
mhm,
until I spent time. I went to women's seminars and I learned what was going on, and
yeah.
then that understanding was enough, to help me through that. So,
Okay.
you know how to get a hold of me. So if you have any
Sure.
information for me, feel free to send it to me.
Sure.
I would love to know more. And like I said, I already feel better now just talking to you, and I do appreciate that. But if, you know, I'm not going to be blabbing this to everybody in the world, but
Fair.
at least I know that I feel comfortable with what has transpired in my life, and I don't feel bad about it. I just I when I was when my mother passed away, she was 53, and I was a complete mess. My entire family was a mess. I was smoking
Mhm.
3 packs of cigarettes a day when she died because I was living in California, and then I came back to New England, as my father told me, Greg, get over here now. And so I came here. Okay, now I'm going to get emotional.
Mhm.
I didn't make it. My brother came out and told me that mom was dead. So,
That would be hard.
I missed her greatly,
Yeah.
and especially at 53. I mean, when I hit 53, I said, hey, I beat my mom. I lived longer than she did, so. And I just beat my dad. He was in his 60s, so. But it was very traumatic. That was the worst part of her is losing her, and this was way after I had my fantasies and fetishes about her, so it had
Mhm.
nothing to do with it. It was just, hey, we all love our mothers,
Mhm.
even if they're difficult sometimes, it's your mother,
Mhm.
and you love her. So, okay, calm down, Barry, calm down, relax.
It's okay to be emotional
And,
about it. There's nothing
well,
wrong
this
with
was
being emotional about
1988, so this is not even something current,
it.
but
Mhm.
still, when I think about losing her, and like I said, it had nothing to do with the sexual fetishes and all that stuff. It was just, hey, she's my mom.
Mhm.
So that was tough. 53 years old. That's you don't die at 53. That's just wrong.
Yeah, it's pretty
But
young.
since she was the church secretary, the pastor of the church during her ceremony said the Lord needed a secretary, so he took her. So, and it's like, wow, because everybody knew Mom.
Mm-hmm.
She was popular in the whole church. So,
Mm-hmm.
but so it was a tough emotional loss. But like I said, it doesn't have anything to do with. I mean, I was way into her far before that.
Mm-hmm.
That was in the 70s and stuff. But anyway, okay, I've taken up so much of your time. I do appreciate everything you have done for me today, and like I said, anything you have that might be some useful information for me to read.
Yeah, just I will give me a couple of days to pull a list together for you, and I can definitely send you some resources. Okay.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
You're a doll.
No problem. Thanks so much for calling in.
Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye. All right. Well, that was a good call, I thought. How are we feeling? Oh, something happened to my feed here. There we go. All right. So, as we sort of talked about a little bit on that call, there's a lot of different reasons why fetishes start to happen. And as I mentioned, sometimes it's because when we're in puberty, our body is going through all these hormonal changes, and we actually attribute pleasure, the pleasure that we feel, to things that are around us at the time. So a good illustration of this that isn't related to puberty is actually an experiment where they took a group of people and they got them to walk across a very high bridge. And at the other end, they had someone interview them about their experience walking across the bridge. And then they were asked to rate the interviewer's skills. And there was a bunch of questions, but the main question they were looking for is they got the person to rate how attractive the interviewer was. And as a control group, they had a group of people walk across a very small bridge, just a little tiny footbridge over a stream. And the study showed that people who had that experience, whether they were afraid of heights or whether it was just the exhilaration of being up so high, rated the same interviewer 10 times more attractive. And it was just purely because of this experience that they had, and their bodies going through all these emotions and tensions and stuff from walking across the bridge, right? But they attributed that feeling of elation to the attractiveness of the interviewer. So our minds make connections about things all the time. Sometimes they're not necessarily connections that are related, but our mind makes those connections. And how we respond to that connection often can change what we end up being attracted to long term. Now, this, like I said, this is not always the case. Part of it has to do with sexual orientation. Part of it has to do with our history and how we form attachments and how we had formed attachments with, friends and family and specifically with our parents, and what sort of relationship our parents had modeled to us. Those all play big roles in our experiences. But sometimes it is simply just what we attribute a hormonal change to, and we feel this surge of hormones and we look for a cause for it, and if we can't immediately see one, we assign a cause to it. And then, like I said, through masturbatory conditioning, the more you fantasize about it, the more you masturbate to it, the stronger that connection becomes until it develops into an actual fetish. How are we feeling right now? Are we still with me on this? Do you guys have any questions about anything I've said so far? You guys are pretty quiet in the chat today. So some of the common questions that come up with fetishes is whether or not they're okay. We sort of talked about whether or not they're normal. Everybody has fetishes. It's perfectly normal to have them. It's also perfectly normal not to have them. Um, but, whether or not a particular fetish is okay and whether or not somebody is, considered a pariah or an outcast because of a fetish that they have. And as I sort of mentioned to Greg, when it comes to sexual orientation, the important things to think about is, is it hurting someone? Is it consent? Is everybody consenting? Is everybody giving informed consent as to what's happening here? Um, do you find it personally distressing? Is the reason, or is this fetish that you have, do you find it distressing? Is it causing you anxiety or pain or anything negative like that? And, is it interfering with your life? Is it interfering with your sex life? Is it interfering with your relationships? Are you not able to form healthy attachments with other people because of these? And it's only when the fetish is reaching that level where it's disrupting your life or it's distressing or it's, standing in the way of your ability to form healthy relationships that it really becomes a problem. And if it is a problem, I do recommend, connecting with someone to talk about it and talk through it, and preferably somebody that you can count on to be objective. Friends are really great, but there's also no harm in seeing, a counselor, a therapist, a sex educator, somebody who can help you work through what you're sort of experiencing, what is the cause of the distress or what is the cause of the disturbance, and figuring out how you can manage that and what needs to be done. Nothing wrong with reaching out for help if you find it distressing. That being said, lots of people don't find their fetishes distressing. Fetishes tend to be fairly pleasurable. And like I said, that's perfectly fine as long as everyone is consenting and no one is being harmed against their will. Or being harmed, because you can be hurt by certain things, but in a good way. For anybody who doesn't understand the concept of how pain can be good, some other more commonplace examples would be like going to the gym, gym burn or runner's high. Technically you've hurt your body in some way, but it feels good. It feels like a good kind of hurt. Some people experience certain pain fetishes that same way. So as long as it's not doing irreparable harm to the body, then have fun, right? One thing I wanted to mention as well is that not everyone needs to have a fetish. As much, it's kind of awful in the sense that people who have fetishes feel ashamed because they have fetishes, and then sometimes people who have no fetishes and consider themselves like vanilla, or if they know lots of people that have fetishes and they don't, then they somehow feel like they're boring or awful, or so it's hard because people on both sides of the fence tend to feel ashamed about their sexuality. And it's important to know that different strokes for different folks. Don't yuck someone else's yum. Just because somebody else is into something doesn't mean you have to be. There's no shame in them being into it. There's no shame in you not being into it. It's okay to set your own boundaries, choosing what is right for you, right? And as part of your sexuality and part of claiming your own sexual power is choosing what is right for you. And in some cases, exploring. And sometimes it's easier to figure out what is right for us by kind of sometimes figuring out what isn't for us. Sometimes you have to try something before you really know whether or not you like it, or maybe sometimes you have to try it a couple of times before you know you like it or not. So there's lots of gray when it comes to sexuality. It's there are very few things that are black and white at all, from sexual orientation to sexual preferences. And sometimes things that we think are taboo don't necessarily have to be taboo. Like I said, the guiding stars, is it hurting anyone? Is it distressing? Is it causing pain? Unnecessary and unwanted pain? Those are the questions we should be asking. Is everyone consenting, right? If it's not hurting anyone and everyone is having a good time and not upset about it, the only time that may not necessarily be true is in cases of abuse where one person doesn't realize they're being abused. This often happens when there is a great power imbalance, usually between adults and children, typically, where the child isn't trusting in the adult and they may think that it's okay, but they don't actually know. And they're just sort of trusting the adult to lead. So those are, once again, of age, please. Everyone should be of age and consenting. But aside from that, there's a lot out there, and there's a lot in terms of different experiences and different ideas that people have and different things that people find sexy. So, unless there's any questions, I think we're going to wrap it up for the day. Just give you a moment if anybody wants to type any questions or thoughts or comments. No, it doesn't look like it. All right. So, just as a recap, we've changed the format for Let's Talk About So instead of being 5 days a week now, we're just going with once a week on Tuesdays. So our next episode will be Tuesday, June 30th at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. If you're looking for more, please check out my website, exploresextalk.com. There are tons of articles on there on a variety of different subjects related to sex and sexuality. And if you're looking for that little bit extra, please check out my Sexy Hero Society. It's $20 Canadian a month and gives you access to all sorts of extra awesomeness like relationship challenges and color